Welcome to Brainstorium. I'm Anna Tizard, award-winning dream punk and deeply weird fantasy author. And yes, that's me and my fiction that's deeply weird. Explore and imagine with me the most unexpected story ideas using the surrealist word game of Exquisite Corpse. Find out more and join in at annatizard.com. This is a storytelling challenge unlike anything you've tried before. Hello, imaginative people. I'm Anna Tizard, and this is episode 95 of Brainstorium, creeping ever closer to the 100th episode. And I can't believe we're in December. As the penultimate episode of 2025, this is the Brainstorium equivalent of Christmas Eve. Now, this month sees the release of a magazine for which I was interviewed, and that also includes one of my short stories, the December issue of the Indie Writer's Voice, which you can find at philparker-fantasywriter.com. Don't worry, I will put the full URL in the show notes. It's a free download as a PDF, or you can just read it on your browser. This edition is focused on goal setting, which may seem a little early if you're thinking along the lines of New Year's resolutions. Funny enough, well, maybe it isn't funny at all. I hesitated just for a moment when I was invited to do this interview, because goals are a little bit of a sore topic for me. As I'm not in perfect health, my energy levels are still affected by long COVID, and I still experience mild flu-like symptoms, which I have no choice but to work through. I often find myself frustrated that I can't write more. I haven't released the number of books I would have liked to over the last few years, and it's been slow going for 3 years now, mind-numbingly slow. Brainstorium has kept me going as a way to share something of my creativity and my writing on a regular basis. Otherwise, I think I would just be wilting in a corner, tapping away and wondering if anyone will ever know my writing exists. It's also a great collaborative space as I get to enjoy and share other authors' stories and poems in response to the writing prompts, for which I am forever grateful. So, goals. When I think of goals, some part of me is actually thinking about what I haven't achieved, what I might not be able to achieve, which is a really negative way of looking at this. I don't see myself as a negative person, far from it, and it gave me a bit of a jolt to realise that I've been subconsciously thinking along these lines. You have an uncomfortable feeling about something, but then you let yourself think about it and you start to understand why, to unravel it. So I was really glad in the end to tackle this topic for an interview. It's so easy to avoid the things that make you feel uncomfortable, and sometimes it's so much better to sit down and face them. A difficulty is never just a barrier, and a barrier is surely a door that you have to push sometime. If you can't open it, well, you can still learn from it. It's like the way we have to ask why of our characters, to find the reason for a story and what makes it matter on an emotional or psychological level. Sometimes when we feel awkward or even guilty about something, it's worth gently examining what it is that's causing this reaction so we can find a way to see it all in a more positive light. I hear so much about procrastination around writing and goal setting. Well, we'll do that a little bit, but what about the other risks? The risk of burnout, of pushing too hard, and losing the joy of it. In the interview, I talk about needing to be gentle with my goals, to adapt instead of being relentless, as I have a tendency to be relentless. How I think that goals should be a way of making a big, overwhelming aim seem more reachable, one step at a time. And my own personal paradox of setting myself goals around pursuing the unknown and of planning to discover the unexpected. As we move towards the Christmas break, hoping that you get a decent Christmas break, here's a reminder to not necessarily start goal setting the moment we hit 1st of January. If there are things you want to achieve in life, there's no time like the present. If you know you want something, write it down, make it official, and then try and break it down into achievable steps. You don't have to wait for an excuse like New Year when you might be better off having a nice rest. There's nothing quite like jotting something down in the moment when the idea occurs to you, when it's fresh. That's when you'll get clarity. You can then set yourself the goal of relaxing at Christmas. How about that? The magazine features several different authors' views on goals, some of whom clearly have a much simpler relationship with goal setting than I do. And it's always good to hear other people's perspectives on things. The magazine ends with a lovely piece from Fraser Armitage, the sci-fi writer, about balancing the risks of goal making. He says, every time you set a goal, you take a risk, but it's a risk that's rooted in the pursuit of your own personal joy. So positive and inspirational. There's even a short list of questions near the back of the magazine to help you set your own goals, which includes the goal of celebrating your achievements. Well, you can't get much more positive than that. But right now, let's live in this moment. Enjoy stories and the endless possibilities we can find in the worlds of our imaginations. And do I have some stories to share with you? The writing prompt I shared in the last show for your response was the blank-faced origami, which I said could be interpreted as the blank-faced origami artist or origami expert. A tricky one, fewer responses this time, but some really fantastic ones. The poet Elena Dennison wrote, "The blank-faced origami master dreams a swan but folds a dog, a shark that came out frog, less big bison, more a hog. What a disaster, origami master, forfeit and fold, desist. Poker faces with no aces, and no aces mean no wins, only heartbreak, paper cuts, and a chock-full rubbish bin." I love the rhythm of this. I almost found myself wanting to dance as I read it out. And towards the end, as we reach heartbreak and paper cuts, the rhythm sort of slows down and becomes more plodding as the paper folder's creativity sort of sputters and fails finally. This is so clever, a real gem of a poem. Thank you, Elena. Next, Eric Montgomery wrote a flash fiction story entitled The Paper Man. Marla liked the calm that settled over the community room once the tenant meetings ended. The chairs sat uneven, the agendas scattered, the complaints still hanging in the air like faint static. She took her time returning the space to order. She moved a stack of agendas aside and caught sight of something small near the edge of the table. At first it looked like a scrap someone had folded absent-mindedly. On closer inspection, it held the shape of a tiny origami boat, the creases sharp and deliberate, balanced lightly, as if whoever made it understood exactly how much pressure to use. She placed it in the drawer where she kept stray pens and paper clips and kept cleaning. The next Tuesday brought the usual noise. Residents talked over one another about parking fees and broken mailboxes. Marla passed around forms, her attention drifting now and then to the quiet end of the table, where Chris, one of the newer tenants, sat listening with an ease that stood apart from the clamour. He didn't jump in, he didn't fidget, he simply absorbed the room. When the room finally emptied, she started her usual sweep. Near Chris's chair lay another folded figure, an origami fox, its sharp ears pressed cleanly into place. Someone had taken real care with it. She slipped it into the drawer beside the boat. A week later, after the last voices faded down the hall, she found a crane balanced on the backrest of Chris's chair. Its wings were shaped with steady hands. She placed it gently with the others. The fourth week, she reached for the corner of the table where she always began her clean-up and paused. A new figure rested there, folded from a single sheet into a lotus. She turned it slowly in her hand, noticing how much more intricate it was than the others, each petal tucked into the next with quiet precision. She lifted it carefully. Across the room, Chris paused in the middle of zipping his bag. He glanced toward her hand, then toward the drawer where she kept the others, as if confirming something he had only guessed. Marla felt her breath catch, small and unexpected. There's something subtle about this, stirring questions in our minds so gently. What is going on between these two? What has just happened? A kind of connection, but you're not quite sure where it might lead afterwards. This connection is as delicately constructed as one of the origami pieces. Thank you for sharing this story, Eric. It's just gorgeous. And you can find Eric's stories and poems at madpoet.org, except that the OE in poet is switched to 03. Paul Monteith wrote, "The blank-faced origamist. I saw a woman emerge from the night, her form illuminated by a lustrous pearl-grey moon. She brushed the ebony night from the shoulders of her snowy frock coat as she crossed a meadow. The frosted grass blades glistened in the moonlight and crisply yielded beneath her high-heeled boots. The crunching sound brought a smile to her face, which lacked any distinctive features, and was as undisturbed as a snowfield or a blank sheet of paper. Brushing aside her ashen-coloured hair, she moved her arms with the grace of a swan in flight. Her nimble fingers pinched and creased the night air, flecked with snowflakes. From between her fingers and thumb, she folded crystalline shapes, ice houses, horse-drawn carts, and street lamps that glowed with a cold blue light. Whenever the wind whipped up a flurry of snow, she worked quickly, pleating and crimping the white powder into groups of adults and children, some sliding on makeshift ice slides, others chilling their hands around a brazier venting cold blue flames. Watching her was like watching a master origamist engineering the snow-stippled night into a Dickensian Christmas village. She pleated, bent, and tucked the snowdrifts into poulterers' shops with geese and game hanging behind the frosted windows, and grocery shop stalls laden with seasonal fruit and nuts, all dusted with ice crystals. The woman walked the snow-flocked street and disappeared into the stillness of the white canvas from which she will fold new imaginings on winter nights yet to come. Wow, this is truly magical. Folding snow into origami? Such an amazing idea and so beautifully described. Thank you, Paul. And you can find Paul Monteith on Blue Sky as Quantum Fairy. Right, I think it's time to reach for new words and new adventures in the Socks of Destiny. That's right. Exquisite Corpse mixes words and phrases into a sentence that goes describing word noun, action, describing word noun. I'll play 3 rounds to create 3 very weird sentences and explore the possibilities they suggest along the way. Then I'll pick one to draft a story or scene from, using the pause button, of course, and there'll be plenty, trust me, there'll be plenty of story fodder to share if you'd like to have a go yourself. So it's with some trepidation that I will reach into the describing word sock. Our first word is from Sean, also known as Blue Wizard Facts. Damp. Someone or something is damp. Why? Have they been caught in the rain? Have they fallen into a river and have only just started to dry off? Our next word, our noun, is from Melody, who is also known as Fickaholic on Blue Sky. Welcome to the game, Melody. Pier. Oh, well, a pier can be damp because it sits over the sea. So that is curiously serendipitous, I feel. Let's see what happened on this pier. Our action is from, if I can just get it off my finger, this is from Paul Thomas. Was so afraid that they hid behind. Now that is curious. I mean, it's always curious when you have an object that is described in these exquisite corpses as if it were conscious or had volition. But the idea of a pier hiding behind something. Curious indeed. Let me try for another word. This is another describing word from Paul Monteith. Mealy-mouthed. So that means someone who's afraid to speak, frankly, afraid to say exactly what they mean. So a peer hiding behind someone or something that is mealy-mouthed. This is getting very strange. Our final word is from, Tim Hardy. Box. Oh, a mealy-mouthed box. So all together we have the damp pier was so afraid that they hid behind the mealy-mouthed box. A hiding pier, one that can disappear, one that is afraid. I imagine a pier when it's closed, when all the lights are off and the coin machines, all their bleeping and the funny games that you get, like the sort of fairground type games where you shoot something to win a teddy bear or a rubber duck, and all those big rides with their flashing lights and music. Once they're all turned off, I imagine it could be quite a creepy place, partly just because of the contrast of the noise and the garishness and all the lights. Once that's all been switched off and there's no one there, and all you've got is the sound of the sea under your feet. And there's a certain weird, unnatural feeling as you stand there on those bare boards and realise that directly underneath you is the constantly roving sea. That could be creepy. Does it make sense that the pier could hide behind a box? I mean, a pier could hide in a mist, kind of, but behind a box? Or someone on the pier after dark might want to hide behind a box. Now that I can picture. But then, looking ahead, we have a mealy-mouthed box. It makes me think of, could it be like an automated puppet in some old-fashioned game, if you could call it that? So you have a glass box where, you put in a coin And then this puppet seems to come to life inside and tells you your future, or your greatest desire, or your greatest fear. But this one is mealy-mouthed and either won't say or struggles to get its words out. Gosh, there's a lot going on in this first exquisite corpse. I wonder if the next one will bring quite so many images to mind. I shouldn't tempt fate. Right, so our first word is from Fraser Armitage. Smelly. Right to the point there, Fraser. Right, let's see. Who or what is smelly? This is from Melody again, Figureaholic on Blue Sky. Unicorn. We have a smelly unicorn. It's not usually the way that unicorns are described. It's very pure and spiritual beings, you know, glowing with a silvery light, not honing with some nasty smell. Okay, our action is from Paul Benfield. If I can just open it up. Reluctantly gave forth. Ah, interesting. So you're not saying precisely how a thing is giving something forth. So it could be emitting something or saying something, like a smell. Okay, let's not go there. Let's just see if there's anything else being described here that we could use. Our next describing word is from, oops, I've got two. I'm going to put one back. This is from Paul Thomas. Penultimate. Oh, so the one before the last. It always sounds very dramatic, the word penultimate. I admit to using it in non-dramatic circumstances. So our next and final word of this exquisite corpse is from Anonymous. Old flame. Oh, that's a confusing phrase. The penultimate old flame. So your partner before your last partner or something? Anyway, the entire exquisite corpse, if this is going to make any sense at all, I do not know, but I have green tea on standby, so that's okay. The smelly unicorn reluctantly gave forth the penultimate old flame. What? Okay, let's give this a stir. Okay, inspiration awaits. The smelly unicorn reluctantly gave forth the penultimate old flame. I think as we have a literal seeming noun at the beginning, a unicorn, that is smelly, I feel like this old flame might be a physical flame. I'm finding that easier to grasp hold of rather than, you know, a romance. Don't go there. Romance with a smelly unicorn. Let's just draw a line through that and move on with our lives. So in that case, we will have a unicorn who can breathe fire. Does this account for the smell? A slight singed smell, burnt hair, burnt mane, I should say. But then the word old suddenly becomes interesting. An old flame taken literally. I mean, it's reluctantly given forth, so it's been held back for a while. That kind of ties in with the action. It's been burning inside the unicorn, which makes me feel that it's more like a dragon somehow. like a dragon who hasn't breathed fire in a while. This unicorn, I don't know how it's come to have this bizarre dragon-like quality, but it's been, the fire inside it has been slumbering. This power, this anger, and the flame that it finally decides to blast out isn't the last one. It's the penultimate old flame. But what could make a unicorn seethe like this? And what could make a unicorn so like a dragon in this particular way? Is it like a half dragon or something? Just the idea, actually, that the question of what would make a unicorn angry, that could be a writing prompt on its own, as that's what this seems to suggest. You don't necessarily have to work out why it smells. Again, it's a different it's a different question, different direction. Right, I'm going to reach for the first word of our final exquisite corpse for the day. This is from Meg. Welcome to the game, Meg. Awesome. Right. Feels more like an opinion if something is awesome, or something that genuinely creates a sense of reverence in another person. So again, it feels like a perspective. This is from Paul Monteith. Ferret. I'm not saying ferrets aren't awesome, but this is an unusual blend of words. Let's just see what comes next. The action is from Dave. Wandered by. Wandered by. Next word, if I can just disentangle it from my finger, is again from Melody. Vicaholic on Blue Sky. Welcoming. Let's just try for one last word. You never know, something may come of this. This is from Anonymous. Loved one. So that's quite an open phrase. Sometimes it's nice to offer an open phrase, or perhaps an abstract concept sometimes, because then you're allowing the other parts of the exquisite corpse to kind of flavour what that may mean. But let's just see what we have here. The awesome ferret wandered by the welcoming loved one. Welcoming. For some reason that makes me think of a doormat with the word welcome on it, or a sign above a pub that says welcome. I'm also noticing that wandered by feels very casual. There's no urgency in that action. There's no hurrying. There's no fear. And for story purposes, I feel like we can take this to mean a false sense of security. A protagonist just wandering into a pub where a loved one waits, by the welcoming loved one. A loved one waits for them to have dinner together, or maybe they work in this pub, this beloved pub that is so welcoming. But let's wind back. Who is this protagonist? An awesome ferret. Well, let's think about ferrets, because we don't have to be absolutely literal in this. Of course not. We are using our imaginations to create stories and story ideas. Ferrets are sleek, fast-moving, very cute. I believe sometimes they're kept as pets, but they have a very sharp bite. They can kill rodents. I believe that's their natural food. Rodents that might be bigger than them as well, because ferrets and weasels are, I guess, the fluffy vampires of the animal kingdom. Which suggests, now that I think of it, it kind of changes the feel of this exquisite corpse. An awesome ferret is maybe a killer who bites. It's also, now I'm wandering down this very strange alleyway of thought, it's interesting to consider how at one point ferrets were used to help catch or trap rats. I think they sort of chased the rats into traps. And if you think about it, you could translate this into a situation in a fantasy story about vampires, where you have a type of vampire, or maybe a half vampire, something like that, a reluctant vampire who assists a vampire hunter in killing or trapping other vampires. There's a very interesting sort of conflict there, which I know has been used before, but even so, this idea of you're still evil or part evil physically, you despise yourself. Is this Blade with Wesley Snipes? It feels a bit like that, but you could do something completely different with it, completely unique with it yourself. It's very interesting conflict. But let's just read The Exquisite Corpse again with this in mind. The awesome ferret wandered by the welcoming loved one. I feel like there's an underlying threat to that sentence now that we're thinking along those lines. And the welcoming loved one is in for it. Well, we've had some very strange exquisite corpses, as ever. Very unique ideas coming out of these today. So I am going to use the pause button as usual and have a go at drafting something based on one of these. And then I will suggest to you a writing prompt. But of course, you are free to write whatever you fancy and let me know if you do so based on one of the prompts in this show. They grew in the spaces in between, the gaps, the silence, the slivers of shadow between the planks of the boardwalk, for the pier is already an in-between place, not quite on land, not quite in the sea. After the riot of the daytime noise, the silence was deafening. Exit sniffed, padding around on bare and grimy feet. His ears dangled lower, drawn by the sweet ache of the darkness. He was a squat, squashed-looking creature, though lithe enough on those wide, fleshy feet, and blue-skinned like the archway over the exit. Gap was here somewhere. Exit could sense her, a little shiver in the darkness. He frowned, shook his head with a flap of his ears, and tiptoed toward the bumper cars. The sky above was blotted with indigo clouds, tinged white where the moon peeped through. Where she graced her silver light, the cars winked back. But what was that dull block of unshiny stuff, waiting like a sentry by the edge of the bumper cars? A trunk. A pile of trunks. Where had they come from? Things ready to be shipped, or was it a delivery? Hidden in plain sight, just the sort of thing that their kind knew how to do. Curious that a human would know such tricks. Exit nearly gasped, as if his own thoughts had conjured the beast. A human-shaped figure, dressed all in black, strode up to the pile of boxes and hesitated. Open-mouthed, Exit just managed to hop behind the boxes before his muscles froze stiff. But clinging to the back of one of the trunks, a gnawed leather strap dangling from her mouth, was Gap. "What are you doing?" said Exit, although he didn't make a sound. The tip of his finger pressed lightly on Gap's ankle, the part of her that was level with his shocked stare. That was all it took to transmit his question into her thoughts. Gap didn't move except to glare over her shoulder. Furiously, she thought back, "What do you think? Trying to get out of here?" Exit almost withdrew his finger. This again. It wasn't enough for Gap to glory under the bright goddess moon, to dwell in the soft shadows, to drink the briny air. She was always dreaming of escape. "You know there's a lot of noise and light out there." He'd said it 100 times, but clearly Gap needed to be reminded of the obvious. There's shadows enough for me. Different shadows. Different places to be. I want to see the world. Come on, Exit, don't give me away. Exit trembled, looked down, though he kept his finger dutifully pointed against her ankle. Sometimes, when she said his name, there were things Gap had asked him in the beginning when she'd first emerged, about Exit's name, how it must be his fate to leave this place. A frightening thing to say when, once, bored and lonely, he'd played tightrope along the metal handrails with nothing but the sea churning beneath him like a giant mouth. There was something that nipped at his fingers and toes whenever he got too close to the threshold. If they tried to leave their home, danger. He wasn't sure what. Death, maybe. And even if Gap survived leaving the pier, what then? He'd be all alone, more or less. Moss barely spoke to him, obsessed with the buttons on the arcade games. And Shadow hadn't seen enough moonlight to know himself yet. It was a rare thing that the moon touched the shadows in such a way that they grew solid and conscious and flat-footed. It took time, a gift not to be thrown away. He must have thought that clearly, for Gap shifted her ankle away and scowled. That's when Exit heard the noise coming from inside the trunk. A voice, muffled, a faint rattling, like something knocking with many fists. Too many fists. Exit leaned closer, pressing his face against the trunk's cool surface, breathing the leather smell. He sensed rather than saw Gap's stillness above him, as she probably did the same. What in Moonlight's name? The human who stood on the other side of the pile of trunks coughed and stepped forward, his boot thumping on the boards. The shock of the cough and the thud, one after the other, sent Gap tumbling to the ground. Exit, his blue skin turning faintly jade with terror, stumbled after her, too late to catch her. She lay sprawled, but staring wide-eyed at the pile of trunks and the massive, fleshy fingers that reached around the top too. Any moment they'd be seen, unless they kept very still and shut their eyes. But neither of them was ready to shut their eyes. The creature's face was lost in shadow, but its meaty fingers grappled with the bottom of the box as it was trying to lift it. Exit stiffened as she saw the beast's finger catch the edge of the strap that Gap had nibbled through. The lid shifted. Exit held his breath, and pandemonium broke free. An explosion of stars dropping over them like sharp-edged glitter. Screams, bleeping of machines, wailing alarms, fake laughter, a recording of a man's voice bursting big and bright like Santa's oversized chuckle. Whirring, coins dropping, children cheering, and winding through it all was that clanging, jangling music the shadow fairies hid from so deeply during the daytime, burrowing into the undersides of the pier. The trunk contained every sound they'd ever cowered from. Huffing in annoyance, the human shifted the trunks back over the opened one, mashing down the weight to keep it closed. After examining the broken strap and scratching its head, the human shrugged and grabbed the topmost trunk on its own, leaving the broken one pressed down by the other. On loud, trudging footsteps, it carried the box away to the arcade to store it somewhere. They weren't being removed to somewhere else. They were a delivery to the pier of sound and pure mayhem. In the puddle of shadow under the remaining tower of boxes, a pair of eyes emerged. 2 arms, 2 legs, stretching their spindly way into the darkness. Exit and Gap stared at the thing and each other. No need to touch fingers or toes, or any part of them, for the understanding that flowed between them now. It wasn't just moonlight that made the pier fairies possible. It was the contrast, the sweet silence that ached afterwards, the slanting shadows, the pitch darkness from which they first clambered and broke free, sniffing the briny air like this fresh newbie, skinny and knobbly-kneed. The noise and light and chaos of the daytime gave them the deepest night, the quiet from which their newness was born. The shock of the change was the thing that made them possible, the light that cast a shadow. And that is how the damp peer was so afraid that they hid behind the mealy-mouthed box. Although the mealy-mouthed bit changed from a muffled noise into a complete cacophony. I'm not sure about the ending of this story. I think the story overall probably needs a bit of tightening here and there, and I think it needs to be tied off better. But it is first draft material. How did I get here? Well, I did try to do the 3-minute brainstorm like last time, focusing on setting and sights and smells, but it kind of got a bit out of control. I took much longer than that and found myself writing brief descriptions of the pier at night and the silence, and these funny little creatures emerged. At the end of the first brainstorm, which I did on paper, mostly on the bus for about half an hour, 40 minutes, I reached a point where I realised I was missing the why of the story. I was hunting for a twist. So I put it down with that question, waiting to be answered the next time I picked it up. And of course, the twist turned out to be as simple as a change of perception, a new understanding based on the very nature of these fairies and how they came to exist. Funnily enough, every time I tried to write the word exit, I typed exist instead. I guess I'm not used to writing the word exit or something, although I could handwrite it okay. Weird. It's a bit like when I try to type the word begin, and it often ends up as being. What's that about? These accidental anagrams. Anyway, before I get lost down that very weird corridor of thoughts, next time will be the Christmas special. Can you believe it? And I will be exploring the art of playing Exquisite Corpse in person, for fun, with friends and family, not necessarily for writing prompts. But of course, once the game is over and everyone's moved on to Jenga or secondsies of pudding, or they've slumped in front of the TV for the umpteenth rerun of Elf, or dare I say it, Home Alone, or whatever it is, these mad moments of creativity and serendipity that were originally just for laughs could turn into something. A spark of a new story? Who knows? But to get everyone in the mood for the game in the first place, to get people on your side when they think, what is this weird sounding game? There may be some simple, brief exercises to try so that you don't end up with sentences full of crackers, Christmas and Santa for the nouns, and sparkly, sleepy and drunk for describing words. While that can be fun at first, the sentences might turn out duller than you'd hoped if it's all like that, let's face it. Help your family get into the zone, into an imaginative state of mind at the beginning, even if they have no interest whatsoever in creative writing, and the results will be all the more fun and intriguing, and potentially inspiring for you later on. So between now and the next show, I am planning to host an in-person game of Exquisite Corpse at my office party. This will indeed be an audience of people who either aren't writers, that I know of, or at least aren't in the writing mood. They just want to have some laughs, and I want to help them get into the zone and squeeze the most hilarity out of the game by stirring up their imaginations. To this end, I will be testing out a couple of ideas on them. My poor unsuspecting colleagues, they won't know what's hit them. and I'll report back to you on what I did and what did and didn't work. You never know, there might be something you can take away from this to help you host a game of your own with colleagues or loved ones to the best possible effect. So people will always remember that crazy word game we played at Christmas. Stay tuned for the Christmas special out on Saturday the 20th of December. And if all goes well in the office, I may have some funny results to share with you. In the meantime, let me know if you have a story idea, a poem, or a short story up to 250 words on the mealy-mouthed box. A box that can't quite tell you what it means, or a creature in that box, or some other interpretation, whatever you can think of. You know what to do. Go to annatizard.com, hit the contact button on any page footer, and let me know before next Friday. Until next time, go forth and be inspired. I hope you enjoyed today's Brainstorium. You can find out more about Exquisite Corpse and my series, The Book of Exquisite Corpse, at annatizard.com. Subscribe to my e-newsletter and you'll get Volume 1 for free. And while you're there, why not submit a few words to the Socks of Destiny on my play page? You may inspire me or inspire yourself to write a unique new story. See you next time.